It's my first post on Reddit, and I thought it would be nice to talk about what I experienced a few years ago. I apologize in advance if there's a few mistakes. English isn't really my first language. I was 18 years old and decided to take a gap year to reflect a bit on my studies and to have new experiences. I ended up going a year abroad in Toronto, Canada to learn a bit of English because it was always useful. I contacted an education company that put me in contact with my foster home, and soon enough, I was ready to leave. It was the very first time I was traveling alone, and that far from my country. I'm from Europe, by the way, so I was quite stressed out in the beginning. But as time passed and as I began to make friends, I started to feel quite at ease very quickly with my new environment and fell in love with the city. It wasn't rare that I left and wandered a bit on my own just to explore new places, but when I was alone, I always came back before it was dark because I wasn't too comfortable. Plus, being a girl, the people I was living with didn't want me to be outside too long at night. One day, I decided to pay a visit to my first foster family that was living in North York, and I was currently living in Scarborough with my third family. I had to change family 4 times and ended up living in different areas of the city throughout the year, so I obviously took the subway. To give you an idea of the length of the events, the trip was supposed to take about 1 hour, but with the traffic and the recurrent problems on the lines, it lasted 2 hours or so. I first took the subway on the Green Line at Kennedy, then changed at St. George to take the Yellow Line and go to north to Shepherd West, and then get out and take a bus to finally arrive to their house. So I basically had to go from east to north, passing by the center. I invite you to look at the map of Toronto's subway just so you can clearly understand my path. So I'm walking for the subway at Kennedy. It was in the middle of the afternoon, so everything was very crowded. But from the corner of my eye, I see a man kind of looking at me. I ignore it, thinking that it wasn't anything and that I was probably just paranoid. But I wasn't really comfortable, so I just put my headphones on and stared at my phone. The subway arrives and everybody gets in. I found somewhere to sit, which is a miracle considering how crowded the subway was, and just minded my own business. After a few minutes, I stopped looking at my phone, wanting to look outside because we were passing on a bridge, and I really liked the view. But as soon as I turned my head, I saw the same man, standing up and staring directly at me. When he saw that I saw him, he smiled at me. I was a bit concerned, but not scared, because even though I had been there for only 3 months, I knew that there were a lot of weird people in this city. Not wanting to be rude, I smiled back and then stared at my phone, not wanting to meet his eyes again. I really began to worry when the subway arrived at St. George. The subway stops, I get out, start walking to take the subway on the Yellow Line, and then wait for it to come. When I turn my head to see when it's supposed to arrive, I see the same man as before, still staring and smiling at me. I'm not smiling at him anymore, and I quickly avoid eye contact. After a few minutes, the subway finally arrives. I jump in it and change wagon, wanting to be as far as possible from him. Time passes, and I don't see him in the crowd near me, so I'm a bit better. Also, I remember feeling silly for thinking that someone was following me. The subway finally arrives at Shepherd West, and I start walking to catch my bus. Doing so, I'm reaching for my pass, but make it fall on the ground. So I stop, pick it up, and who am I seeing when I get up? The creepy dude, walking towards me, staring and smiling again. I changed direction and started walking faster, hoping to reach the bus stop and having more people around me. I get there, but he gets there as well, and I can feel him looking at me. At this point, I was completely freaked out, not only because I was scared as hell, but also because I didn't want him to know where my foster parents were living, considering that the bus stop was really close to their house. The bus arrived and we all got in. There weren't any sitting places, so I went standing close to the door. That's when I thought of a way out. I knew that people were going to press the button for my stop because a lot of people were going off there. So I waited patiently for my stop. Someone else pressed the button, as I anticipated, and waited that a maximum of people went out of the bus. Then, when the bus started to close its doors, I jumped out of the bus and started walking in a random direction. So if the creepy dude was looking at me, he wouldn't know where I was going. I was very lucky that the bus driver didn't reopen his doors. After walking for a bit, I turned around and started heading to the house of my foster parents, relieved that it was finally over. I spent a few hours there and decided not to talk about my recent experience. I didn't want them to worry or to drive me home, them being quite old and tired most of the time. Time passed, and I decided to head home. I thanked my family, wished them a happy evening, and went outside to the bus stop across the street. After a few minutes, the bus arrived. I get in, look around for somewhere to sit, and then I froze. The man was sitting in the back of the bus. I didn't move for a few seconds, and then went to sit next to a lady in front of the bus, completely panicked. I was wondering how he could have ended up in the same bus as me. It couldn't be bad luck. He followed me for 2 hours before that. At that time, I had no idea. But now, I think that when I got out of the bus, he got out at the next stop. That stop isn't far away from mine, so you can kind of see if there's people waiting at the next stop. He might have waited for me to take the bus again. That day, I was wearing a bright yellow mustard color hoodie, so I think he knew it was me, even from a distance. The bus started driving, and I felt helpless because it was clear to me that I wasn't paranoid and that this man clearly wanted something out of me. The big mistake I made here wasn't to alert the people on the bus. They could have helped me get out of the situation by scaring the guy off. But, as I said, I was panicked and wasn't thinking clearly. When we arrived at the station, I almost started running down the stairs to try and catch the subway, but arrived a little bit too late. He arrived a few seconds after and went to sit down on a stone bench, still looking and smiling at me. All the time, I was desperately thinking of a way out of this situation. Then the subway arrived, and I think that I've never had that much luck in my whole life. When the doors opened, I saw 2 of my friends, one of them being a guy that was quite built, sitting in the wagon. They told me afterwards that they were going downtown to go to the gym together. I got up and ran to them, explaining the situation that I was in. The creepy dude went and sat close to us in the wagon, and when he saw that I knew them, he got out at the next stop. I never saw him again afterwards, and I never wish to experience something similar in my life ever again. I have never been followed before that, and this experience had taught me to always have my keys in my fingers when I'm walking alone, even now. At first, I wasn't going to share this story, but now I am more than over the situation. Before we start, Judge me all you want, but I know I can be a bit stupid. It's only because I don't like to force myself to live on edge because of the sick people in this world. I live my life as freely and fearlessly as I possibly can. At the time of the story, I was 23 years old, and my birthday just passed the 29th of November, making me 24 now. I'm only 5'2" and about 170 to 180 pounds. I'm strong enough to help move furniture, but not strong enough to defend myself the way that I would like. You would think, as someone who survived an attempted sexual assault, I would learn some self-defense, but I've lost a lot of motivation and self-worth since. The abusive relationship really made it worse, but that's beside the point. So to start, I won't get into major details, but I had just moved to Jackson, Tennessee from Miami, Florida, because I had just gotten out of an extremely physically, emotionally, and mentally abusive relationship that lasted 3 years. About sometime in June, my current boyfriend and I had been doing trips pretty much each weekend. We would visit a new hiking plus waterfall area. Although there isn't a nightlife, Tennessee is amazingly beautiful. We went to this place called Narrows of Harpeth. This was one of the underwhelming places we've been, but it was still relaxing. After we found a cool place to sit and swim after hiking for 2 hours, a few shots and one blunt later, it was time to make the hour trip back to Jackson. I put my shoes on and I slipped my dress back on, which is a little bit above the knee length. Like if I bent too far forward, my little bum would be on display. Well, I own my body and sexuality, so showing some skin never really bothers me, and I don't really think about it because I expect people to respect me as I respect them and the way that they dress. Anyways, on the way back to the car, I, being the tipsy dumbass that I am, managed to trip, fall, and scrape my leg pretty badly. It's actually scarred now. Anyways, I tell my boyfriend we need to go to Walmart once back in Jackson so I could thoroughly clean my wound with hydrogen peroxide and neosporin. My boyfriend says okay. An hour later, we're at Walmart. Mind you, it's only about 9 p.m., going on 10 p.m., not late by any means. We get what I need, but because I'm still tipsy and pretty high from the blunt, I finished the car ride home. I get distracted so easily, and I remember that my boyfriend got me the wrong size case for my iPhone 11 Pro. He got the Max instead of just the Pro. I wanted an idea of what I could trade it for, and he wanted to look at some of the games as well as a gaming PC for me. So I am happily tipsy and excited to find a new case, which, if you ever been to Walmart, the cases are never in order and often causes you to bend down to look at things. There was a man looking at the cases, and I just said, "Excuse me, sorry, can I look at those cases you're standing in front of?" He just looked at me with a blank yet dirty look, nodded, and stepped over. As I am happily looking through the shelf, about 5 minutes in, and this lady and what I assume are her 2 children approaches me. And mind you, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I am thrown off by how close she is to me, especially with her baby that looks no older than 9 months. I step back, and she grabs my arm and says, "Oh my God! Wow! I haven't seen you in forever! Look at that hair, girl! Wow!" And her grip tightens. At this point, My heart is racing, and my face gets so hot and I'm visibly scared. That's when my boyfriend says, "Everything okay, babe?" He looks at me equally concerned, and I'm thinking to myself, does this lady know my mom? Who is she? Is she an old family friend that I don't remember? Mind you, I'm originally from Ohio, and we have family here, but I don't know any of my family that lives in Tennessee. My mom loves to brag about her kids, so I'm trying to shake this weird feeling, but her daughter keeps looking behind me, so I go to turn around, and she goes, "No, don't turn around. Walk with me. Please trust me." I don't know why, but I felt that she was being genuine, and I just followed her. We stepped over to the side by the baby clothes, which is still in front of the electronics, and she says, "Baby, I'm so sorry to scare you, but there are 3 men surrounding you. They went by the laptops, talked, and then I noticed the guy taking photos and videos of you while you were bent over looking at the cases. And the other man was a tall guy next to you. I don't know where the third man went." All I can remember is this high-pitched ringing in my ears. My stomach flipped, and I felt like I was going to be sick. I never knew what people meant when they say everything slowed down, but in that moment, everything moved in slow motion, and I was freaked out to the point that I have no clue what she said after. It was as if I blacked out for a moment, and then quickly came to a realization that the family and my boyfriend were looking at me visibly panicked. I turned around, and there he was. He's a Hispanic-looking guy, shorter than me, maybe about 5'1", but he was very much built and also looked to be about 40. The other man, who was white, about maybe in his 40s, was about 5'11". And I'll never forget the dead blank rage in that man's Hispanic eyes. Like his first meal in 5 days had been stolen from him, and he was ready to kill in order to have it back. That's when I saw a white man walk over to him. They said something, both looked at me, looked back at each other, and said something else, and started to walk slowly towards us. At that point, we all turned and headed for the registers, and that's when I thanked my lucky stars, because there were about 3 cops at the front of the store. By the time, I rudely pushed past people to get out of the self-checkout, with tears in my eyes and frantically repeating "excuse me" to anyone who got in front of me. I looked back and saw them just standing there with a third guy this time. My heart sank. I wanted to pass out at that moment. I guess it looked like I was going up to the cops because they hightailed it once they saw me get close to the cops. Me being high as shit and being a black woman, I wasn't going to chance the cops turning this around on me because I was simply stoned and tipsy. My only thought was, get to the car, get to the gun, don't stop, run. My boyfriend said he could barely keep up with me. I had grabbed his hand so tight that he had to force the grip off because it felt like I was going to crush his hands. And before anyone bashes my boyfriend, I don't expect a man to be my savior. Also, he isn't the angry, confrontational type. He's very calm and level-headed. He wouldn't even hurt a fly unless I asked him to get rid of it for whatever reason. I just knew I was the target, and I am putting him at risk. I knew they could easily jump him, and one of them could overpower me after taking him out. I probably looked crazed, half walking and running past everyone, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to become another missing sister. We made it to the car safely, and we peeled out of there. I've never seen him drive so fast, as he is beyond careful and would never speed. We sat at a Sonic for about an hour to make sure that we weren't being followed. We recounted everything that happened, and I just couldn't believe we both were too tipsy to notice that I had become prey in somewhere as simple as a Walmart. I've never felt so stupid and irresponsible in my life. I never want to experience that fear and panic in my life again. I didn't even get the chance to thank the lady who pretty much saved us. Sometimes we talk about it. What if the lady didn't see what the guy was doing? Even if we caught on, there were three and we only saw two at first. I'm 5'2" and 170 pounds, and I think of the horrors. That night, I had a nightmare that the men attacked us in the parking lot. Creepiest part of the dream was that the third man shoved me in the trunk, and I remember looking up and all I could see was a featureless face. I woke up in tears that night, realizing that I didn't get a clear look at the third guy's face. It took me nearly a month to enter a Walmart again, since I have moved states and have only been to Walmart once since moving here. So, to the creepy man that stalked me, obscured me, and basically followed me even when they knew I was around other people, I genuinely hope we never meet again, because the gun I carry on me now has 3 beautiful halos that would enjoy meeting you all. This takes place a few years ago in North Carolina. I remember it was October 2016. The trees were turning orange, and everyone's main concern was buying candy to pass out on Halloween, which was only about a week away. I was taking interior design classes at Wake Tech, and I ended up changing my degree completely because the program was so disorganized, and I figured out that I didn't want to do it anyways. The schedule they had us on was also extremely idiotic. To spare you the details, I had a 3-hour gap in between classes, which I felt was extremely redundant. But whatever. Instead of sitting around for 3 hours, I would use the time to take the 30-minute drive home, chill for an hour or so, and then drive the 30 minutes to get back to school. On this particular day, I was running late to get back to school. Not to mention, driving through lunch hour traffic is excruciating. So I decided to take the back roads to minimize my road time. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. I'm sitting at the stoplight that takes me down an extremely long back road that leads me directly to my school. As soon as the light turns green, I'm about to hit the gas when this old beat-up 4Runner SUV pulls right in front of me and almost snagging my right headlight. Well, whoever was in the car was driving so irresponsibly, so that activated the road rage in me. The lane we were originally in ended up turning into 2 separate lanes, one that goes left and one that turns right. He was in the lane to turn left, and I was in the lane that turns right. So, me being the hothead that I am, I pulled up next to this guy, held my fist down on the horn of my car, and flipped him off. But what happened next was something out of a horror film. While I was honking the horn at him, before I flipped him off, he slowly turns his head to face me, and I will never forget what he looked like. He was a bald, fat, white guy, probably in his late 40s to early 50s, beady eyes. But the one thing I will never forget were his bottle cap serial killer looking glasses. He reminded me of Jeffrey Dahmer, but overweight and bald. He was staring at me while he was driving, and as soon as I flipped him off, I turned right. Not even 5 seconds down the road, I hear a plethora of honking behind me, and when I looked in my rearview mirror to see what was going on, the same psycho cut through all of the cars that were behind me just to follow me. I knew he was following me because he would hit the gas and get real close to my back bumper, but then let off the gas, gets real close to my bumper, then lets off the gas again, all the while revving his engine at me. He repeats this for a while. He was driving like a maniac, possibly trying to hit my bumper and cause an accident. I could see in the rearview mirror that he was screaming and throwing his hands up, flipping me off, just like I did to him, but only more psychotic and looking way more violent. This was the only time I didn't have my gutting knife on me, or any kind of weapon to protect myself. Stupid me, I know, but because of this, I had to think fast. I came up with another plan: to pull up to the next stoplight that was green, wait for it to turn yellow, then immediately floor it once it turned red so that I could leave him at the stoplight. When I pulled up, I was in the left turning lane and he was behind me, honking and yelling at me out of his window. I didn't hear anything he said because my window was up, but I could see him in my side mirror. I didn't let his behavior get to me. I waited for the light to turn yellow, and at the split second that it was going to turn red, I turned. Idiotically, I thought this would deter him by keeping him stopped at the red light. But of course, he runs the red light. Yes, I was surprised, even though I should have known someone as erratic as this probably wasn't going to abide by the rules of traffic. It still freaked me out regardless. The only thing I could think was, if this guy doesn't care about the laws of the road, then he probably doesn't care about the laws at all. In my mind, he was capable of anything, and we were the only 2 cars on those back roads with no stores or restaurants for miles. So instead of allowing my panic to take over, I started to scan my surroundings. I was looking for a public place, somewhere that I knew a bunch of people would be. I drive down this road all the time, and I knew there was a church coming up to my right. It wasn't a Wednesday or a Sunday where there would definitely be people there, but I took a chance. As soon as the entrance was in view, I whipped it into the church parking lot. By some chance of fate, there were a bunch of cars parked, and I saw a massive crowd of people walking out of the church at the same time that I floored into their parking lot, with the psycho guy still behind me. I rolled my window down, laid my fist on the horn, and screamed. Yes, I screamed, just incoherent primal screaming, with one hand on the horn and the other out of the window, waving my arm around and flipping him off. I know, I shouldn't have done something so unholy on holy ground, but why don't you sue me, right? It was enough for the church people to obviously take notice, and more than enough for the crazy guy that followed me to freak out in his car. He erratically reversed, which he almost hit someone trying to get out of there, and he sped off back the way he came. It all happened so fast, and a bunch of ladies from the church ran up to my car and started asking if I were okay, and I gave them a brief rundown of what happened. They were shocked by this and asked me if they needed to call somebody or the police for me, but I told them no. I should have said yes. I know I should have, but I was late as hell for school, and I was so shaken up by what had happened, I just wanted to get away from the scene as quickly as possible. There were quite a few lessons I learned that day. Number 1, never stop driving if you're being followed. I was lucky that the guy didn't get out of his car at the stoplight and shoot me or something. That was a dumb move on my part, because if he had decided to get out of the car, anything could have happened. Number 2, if you're being followed, pull into the police department. And if you can't find the police, then pull into a public place where you know there will be people around. Most crazy people don't want to be caught doing crazy things around the general public. They want you to be isolated. So that's number 2. And number 3, if the crazy come for you, then you have to act crazier than them. Hence, the screaming and the incoherent loud noises and flailing that I made out of the window of my car. I saw his facial expressions change from pure rage to horror when he saw me bust out a psycho move myself, and with a mixture of tons of people coming out of the church. In his mind, all I think he could think to do was retreat. I never got the chance to properly thank those church people. They didn't actually do anything to the guy, but them just being there at the right place and at the right time saved my life. I full-heartedly believe that. So, to the fat, psychotic Jeffrey Dahmer-looking bastard, you better hope you don't follow me again. I carry a gun now, and I remember you and your car, even 4 years later. And to those wonderful people at the church who checked on me after my horrific endeavor, thank you. I don't practice Christianity, nor really believe in a specific religion. I find truth in all religions. But I hope that God blesses you all tremendously. Please stay safe out there, everyone, and happy holidays. Hi, thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate it. If you want to send me a story to read, feel free to do so. My email is in the description of the video. And if you want to follow me on my social media, just to get updates or maybe to talk, the links and info for my Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram accounts are also in the description. And finally, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And turn that bell on to be notified for upcoming surprises. And remember, your fear feeds me.